Ready in the other room? Okay. Good morning.
Good morning.
Order our joint committee hearing of the House Committee on Water and Land and the House Committee on Judiciary and Hawaiian Affairs. Today is Thursday, February 25th. It's 9 a.m. and we are in conference room 430 and the Judiciary and Hawaiian Affairs Committee is in conference room 325. And we have HCR 41 and HR 33 for a hearing today. But before we get started, may I remind everybody who is testifying today that in order to allow as many people to testify as possible, there will be a 2-minute time limit per testifier. Because morning hearings really should adjourn before noon, not all testifiers may have the opportunity to testify. In that event, please know that your testimony will be considered by the committee. And we have received all the written testimony and the members have that before them. Please keep yourself muted and your video off while waiting to testify and after your testimony is complete. The Zoom chat function will allow you to chat with the technical staff only. Please use the chat only for technical issues. If you are disconnected unexpectedly, you may attempt to rejoin the meeting. If disconnected while presenting testimony, you may be allowed to continue if time permits. Please note the House is not responsible for any bad internet connections on the testifier's end. In the event of a catastrophic network failure, it may be necessary to reschedule the hearing or schedule a meeting for decision-making. In that case, an appropriate notice will be posted. Please maintain decorum and refrain from profanity or uncivil behavior. Such behavior may be grounds for removal from the hearing without the ability to rejoin. Thank you very much for your understanding and thank you all for joining us today. We'll go ahead and start. We're having our hearing today before us, one or two measures, House Concurrent Resolution 41 and House Resolution 33. They both have identical content. The title is Convening a Working Group to Develop Recommendations for a Governance and Management Structure for Mauna Kea. We'll be hearing testimony on HCR 41 and then on HR 33. A number of testifiers have submitted the same testimony for both, and I'll mention that. But for those who have testified or submitted testimony on both, you'll be given the opportunity to present your testimony once. So first up, HCR 41, we have testimony from University of Hawaii, Mr. Greg Chun, providing comments. Mr. Chun, if you're available, the floor is yours. Please proceed.
Mahalo, Chairs Tarnas and Nakashima, Vice Chairs Branco and Matayoshi, and members of the committees. Thank you for the opportunity here to submit testimony. The University of Hawaii appreciates the intent of HCR 41 and HR 33 and would like to express some concerns. First, before I summarize those concerns, just let me say that it's a privilege for the university to be responsible for stewardship of Mauna Kea. As we know, the Mauna is one of the most revered places in Hawaii because of its cultural, historic, and environmental significance, as well as being the premier site for astronomy in the Northern Hemisphere. And we're committed to continually improving our care. If a working group is formed, we will certainly participate. Our submitted testimony summarizes 4 areas of concerns. First area is intended purpose. We believe HCR 41 and HCR 33 could be improved by stating more clearly what the purpose of the resolution is intended to, or that any recommendations coming out of the working group is intended to address. Organizational design and structure should support the mission of this new entity. So we believe that the resolution is silent on what exactly is the purpose of this new alternative governance structure. As we know that for some, questions of who is responsible for stewardship of Mauna Kea represents a dissatisfaction over many longstanding issues that cannot simply be resolved by reconsidering who serves as steward. Second area is feasibility and uncertainty. We believe that the resolutions could be improved by clearly indicated that the feasibility of implementing any recommendation of the working group needs to be considered as one of the criteria. We are already experiencing a situation where this uncertainty about the future of astronomy on Mauna Kea is affecting funders and sponsors' investment decisions, even in the current current telescopes. Thirdly, we'd like to point out that HCR 41 and HB 33 seem to rely exclusively on a single review of UH's management, the most recent independent review sponsored by DLNR and conducted by Kuivalu Consulting. We believe this provides an unbalanced starting point for the working group. In our testimony, we outlined several other sources of information and other examples of where our outreach has been extensive and in some cases, I believe, creative. So those are all outlined in the testimony. It is our experience that our critics hesitate to engage for several reasons, either their opposition of any form of astronomy on Mauna Kea, or concerned that any input on their part might be taken as tacit support of UH or the 30-meter telescope. And even the Kuivalu report acknowledged this in their report. So any process for addressing the ongoing governance and management of Mauna Kea needs to consider, I think, exactly, if I can repeat again, what we are trying to accomplish. Lastly, I would like to just point out that we believe that the resolutions could be improved by a clearer process, defining a clearer process for selection of working group members. That process should ensure that the composition fairly represents a broad range of Hawaii Island interests, is not overly Oahu-centric, and does not favor those who either oppose or support astronomy on Mauna Kea. And that the committee does not turn the question of stewardship of Mauna Kea into a surrogate for broader issues that cannot be resolved with a resolution or task group. Just to conclude, UH remains committed to being excellent stewards. We remain committed to working in a collaborative manner with all stakeholders, and we stand ready to participate in any process that brings folks together to engage in civil, fair, and objective discussions concerning the diverse interests and values ascribed to this special and revered place. Thank you for the opportunity to submit testimony.
Thank you very much. Next, we have testimony from the Office of Hawaiian Affairs. Representative of the Office of Hawaiian Affairs, the floor is yours. Please proceed.
Mahalo. Thank you, Chair Tarnas and Nakashima, as well as Vice Chair Branco and Matayoshi, and members of the Water and Land and Judiciary and Hawaiian Affairs Committee. I'm Sylvia Hussey, the CEO of the Office of Hawaiian Affairs, and I'm here today on behalf of OHA's Trustee Ad Hoc Committee on Mauna Kea, chaired by Trustee Dan Ahuna. We stand on our written testimony of comment and highlight a few 3 points. And interestingly, we support some of the comments that were shared earlier. And we are, one, appreciative of the reflection and recognition of long-standing concerns regarding mismanagement and mistrust as a result of university practices. We also express concern in using the December 2020 Kuivalu report as a starting point, and think there are many opportunities to have other starting points and inputs to be able to think about management and governance structures. And then third, we offer that the composition of the work group should include Native Hawaiians who have demonstrated kuleana in terms of lineal descendants and cultural practitioners from Hawaii Island who have deep and intimate knowledge of the landscape there. And finally, included in that is we think that representatives be appointed from an independent group to think about how this approach and this process could be implemented. So again, representatives, we thank you for the opportunity to share the Trustee Ad Hoc Committee's comments on these measures and stand ready to answer any questions that the committees may have. Mahalo.
Thank you very much. Next, we have testimony from the Department of Land and Natural Resources. providing comments. Representative from DLNR, the floor is yours. Please proceed.
Thank you, Chair Tarnas, Chair Nakashima, and committee members. It's Suzanne Case, Director for the Department of Land and Natural Resources. We stand on our written testimony offering comments. Primarily, we provide for the committee's background information, a summary of the audit track from the late 90s to the present day, noting that really those audit findings from 20 years ago have been addressed. And then also we presented a summary of the Kuivalu report that we commissioned last year as an independent study of management on Mauna Kea because of these issues about people discussing their perception of mismanagement on the mountain. I do think it's important in this process to focus to identify the problem you're trying to solve. The actual natural and cultural resource management of Mauna Kea is going very well. The Kuivalu report does talk about, as Oha says, some mistrust issues. And, you know, those conversations are always important to have. And with that, I'll just stand by for questions.
Thank you very much. And I'll note that Mr. Sam Lemo may also be available for questions. He's listed here as well.
Yes.
Thank you. Next, we have written testimony in support from Velda Akamu from the Kohala Hawaiian Civic Club. We have testimony in opposition from Kalahui Hawaii Political Action Committee. If a representative from the Kalahui Hawaii Political Action Committee is available, the floor is yours. Please proceed.
Aloha, Chair Tarnas and Vice Chair Bronco and members of the committee. Kalahui Hawaii is opposed to this House Resolution 33, House Concurrent Resolution 41. We stand on a written testimony. Just want to reiterate a couple points. The resolutions are not written factually correct and therefore could create bad law. Mauna Kea is entirely composed of Hawaiian Kingdom, Crown and government lands, Hawaiian lands, and therefore Native Hawaiians are the right holders and beneficiaries of these lands. The lands from the summit down to the 6,000-foot level are conservation lands that by law are to be managed by BLNR for the betterment of the conditions of Native Hawaiians and the general public and in the interest of conservation for the protection of our lands and for future generations. As such, the university is a renter and therefore it's illegal to allow it to manage Mauna Kea. There is bad management due to the fact that BLNR is allowing the UH to manage anything outside of the observatories. Mismanagement and bad management only part of the problem because the greatest single threat to Mauna Kea is its sacredness, water, and all of the life forms that live there and for the development period. So there are two measures right now that have not seen the light of day, House Bill 703 and Senate Bill 1299 that were introduced in the House and Senate. These measures we feel would address the issues, the longstanding issues on Mauna Kea, and they ask for no further development on Mauna Kea summits. A couple other points I wanted to reiterate that, you know, it's hard to trust the state and this working group because of the bad faith actions that have happened, the threat of violence to peaceful kia'i on the Mauna, the arrest of 38 kupuna. Just this legislature alone, Tarnas, Representative Tarnas, you passed out and this committee, Water and Land, passed out a bill, HB 499, that would extend leases on public lands, on Hawaiian lands, with no public input. Just this legislature alone, Rep. Psyche introduced HB 344, which would have abolished the contested case process, which was supported by all the Mauna Kea telescopes. So it's hard to trust the process as a Kanaka Maoli who is standing for the protection of Mauna Kea. It's hard to trust the process when just in these past few months, we have seen actions that work against the interest of Kanaka Maoli in Hawaii and criminalize us by this House leadership. The working group, we fear we will be stacked against the interest of the Kia'i Mauna, who have been successful in stopping the building of TMT. And that is the whole point of this working group, is the building of TMT. We feel that this is a way to find a way forward for that. And basically, we just want to reiterate, no means no, no TMT, a'ole TMT, Kia'i Mauna. So mahalo, and I'll be on too if you have any questions. Mahalo, aloha.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Next, we have testimony from the Mauna Kea Observatories. Mr. Matsuda, or your representative, if you're available, the floor is yours. Please proceed.
Okay, aloha Chair Tarnes, members of the Water and Land Committee, and Chair Nakashima, and members of the Judiciary and Hawaiian Affairs Committee. My name is Rich Matsuda, and I'm here today on behalf of Mauna Kea Observatories that have submitted written testimony in support of the intent of these two resolutions. I'd like to offer some brief comments. The observatories recognize the immense significance and importance of Mauna Kea. And we join all who want the best governance and stewardship into the future. The proposed working group is a welcomed opportunity to collaborate, and the Mauna Kea Observatories appreciate being included and look forward to participating. I'd like to also emphasize the critical need to assure a stable future for astronomy. And this depends on a timely land authorization decision. And so discussions about governance need to take this into account. The working group has an ambitious objective to achieve in a really short time, and we feel we have a lot to contribute to the future possibilities in these discussions. And so our written testimony provides comments that are meant to help the working group be as effective and efficient as possible. So please consider them. In closing, we believe that through collaboration, we can determine what best serves Mauna Kea and the community's collective interests. Thank you, and I'd be happy to take questions.
Thank you very much. Next, we have written testimony providing comments from Miles Yoshioka, Hawaii Island Chamber of Commerce. And then we have comments also provided by the Kona Kohala Chamber of Commerce. And if Ms. Wendy Laros or a representative from the Kona Kohala Chamber of Commerce is available, the floor is yours. Please proceed.
Aloha, Chair Tarnas, and the House Committee on Water and Land, and Chair Nakashima, and the House Committee on Judiciary and Hawaiian Affairs. My name is Wendy Laros, and I'm the President and CEO of the Kona Kohala Chamber of Commerce located on the Hawaii Island. We would like to offer comments for House Resolution 33 and House Concurrent Resolution 41. First, thank you, Chair Tarnas, for your thoughtful approach to this complicated issue. We know that both you and Chair Nakashima are well aware of the complexities of the situation here on Hawaii Island. The Kona Kohala Chamber works to enhance the quality of life for our community through a strong, sustainable economy. For many years, astronomy has been one of our top priorities, and our positions are as follows. We support culture, science, and environmental stewardship on Mauna Kea. We support the astronomy industry on Mauna Kea, noting significant scientific discovery, global leadership, educational outreach, workforce pipelines, jobs, and economic impact. We support the development of the 30-meter telescope, and we encourage a new state lease for the University of Hawaii on Mauna Kea. To conclude our comments, we would like you to work with and support the university to create solutions. Mahalo.
Thank you very much. Next, we received written testimony in support from the Chamber of Commerce of Hawaii, written testimony in opposition from Ho'opaepono Peace Project. And next we have testimony in opposition from Dr. Jim Anthony, Dr. Anthony, if you're available, the floor is yours. Please proceed. Not available? Oh, there you are. Yes, Dr. Anthony, please unmute yourself and proceed. There you are.
Let me see. Chair Nakashima, Vice Chair Matayoshi, and Vice Chair Branco. Good morning. I choose not to address Representative Tanas because I believe he has a very serious conflict of interest in this matter and that he should recuse himself. I base that claim on a public statement that was made by Representative Tanas on July 18th, 2020, where he states unequivocally and clearly and without reservation his support for the Mauna Kea project, that is TMT in particular. Years ago, I was approached by a visiting team of TMT operatives and with a view to discerning my position on the proposal, which was then in embryo to establish the TNT project on Mauna Kea. What I told them at that time, and what I reiterate now, is that these lands on Mauna Kea, all approximately 13,000 acres of them, are part not only of sacred land, but part of a sacred trust known as ceded lands that represent the core interests of this generation of Native Hawaiians and many future generations to come. Cedar lands are not to be messed with. The leases to observatories that have been given so far at far less than market value is scandalous $1 a year. I know the details of what else is involved in the way of alleged payments. But as those leases come up for renewal, and many of them will come up for renewal soon, they need to be set, if they are to be reset at all, at market value. Having said that, and returning to the subject of the visiting TMT team that I had a brief meeting with 10 years ago at least, what I told them is that they should not be messing with Mauna Kea, that there were enough observatories there, and that this was strictly the business of Native Hawaiian people, and we who are not Native Hawaiians should respect their sensitivities and their concern. That is still my position. I cannot interpret this badly put together resolution, except that to emphasize and re-emphasize, as I have done in the way of representations made to the Speaker of the House, that this resolution is ill-conceived, it is dishonest, it is designed to find a backdoor into reconsidering what is close to Representative Tanas's heart, and that is not only to resurrect the notion of a TMT observatory on Mauna Kea, but also to do a number of other things that are not disclosed in the resolution. I oppose the resolution strongly. I support the sentiments that have thus far been expressed by the spokesperson from Kalahui. I believe those arguments are solid, that they cannot be refuted. They have not been refuted in the past, and they're still current now. Look, I'm speaking to them, particularly to all of the members of the two committees, not the leadership, the members. We live on a small set of islands. We should respect Native people. Most of us who live and share the bounty of the Hawaiian Islands are not Native people. We are not First People. We should respect the rights and the traditions of the First People of these islands. That is long overdue. It is our duty to do that, It is our duty to teach our children to do that. It is our duty to teach people like Representative Tarnas to do that. That his statement in support of Mauna Kea and then resurrecting himself as the originator of this resolution is, quite frankly, indecent. It should be jettisoned, not just sent back to the drawing board. It is irretrievable. And
Thank you.
we should bury TMT, give it a decent burial, and move on as a community.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for your testimony. Next, we have testimony, written testimony in opposition from Mr. Andrew Cooper. We have testimony providing comments in writing from Samuel King. Written testimony in opposition from Patricia Cook. Testimony in opposition in writing from D. Green. And we have testimony in opposition from Deborah Ward. Deborah Ward, if you're available, the floor is yours. Please proceed.
Good morning and aloha, Chair and committee members. Thank you for this opportunity. My name is Deborah Ward. I've lived in the view of Mauna Kea for the greater part of my long life, and I've advocated for the protection of the natural resources of the mountains since the 1970s. I've observed the construction of half a dozen facilities and have watched the transformation of a sublime and largely pristine viewscapes into an industrial zone replete with dust and noise, blown rubbish, and many, 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 many people. I've taken part in nearly every hearing since the 1980s and have been a petitioner in 3 contested cases. No new facilities have been built since 2000, primarily due to the conclusion of 2 EIS documents that significant, adverse, and substantial cumulative impacts to the natural and the cultural resources were due to this industrial development in the conservation district. Yet the push to expand this industrial zone continues. In 20 years, thousands and thousands of hours of testimony, hundreds of thousands of petitions filed opposing Mauna Kea's industrialization have fallen on deaf ears. And now the sponsors of this resolution think that 15 handpicked representatives can resolve these longstanding issues in 9 months. Thousands of Hawaii residents put their lives on hold and risked arrest and prosecution to protect this land. And HCR 41 and HR 33 would attempt to create the illusion of inclusion while ensuring that the majority of the voices would always favor the foregone conclusion of the sponsors to promote further development. The sponsors of this resolution fail to fully understand the nature of the profoundly held belief that industrial development is an unconstitutional and an existential infringement of Native Hawaiian cultural, spiritual, and religious beliefs. It's a false narrative to compromise by the Kia'i is possible, and that they would simply allow the TMT to be built. There is no compromise. Those who seek to include the voices that oppose further development may want the input. They want to say consultation took place, but it's not clear at all that the input would be honored. And significantly, the working group fails to give any environmental advocates a place at the table as well. I could go on, but I wanted to point out that this resolution simply does not resolve the issues at hand, and that's why I oppose it. Thank you for the opportunity to testify.
Thank you very much for your testimony. We've received written testimony in opposition from Lanny Sinkin, and we have testimony in support from Jessica Dempsey with the East Asian Observatory. Ms. Dempsey, if you're available, the floor is yours. Please proceed.
Oh, thank you very much. Good morning. My name is Dr. Jessica Dempsey. I am the Deputy Director of the East Asian Observatory operating the James Clerk Maxwell Telescope on Mauna Kea. I would like to thank the committee chairs and members for the opportunity to testify to you today in support, first, of the comments submitted and spoken by Rich Matsuda earlier. I stand also in support and on behalf of the Mauna Kea observatories. We do welcome this initiative and we fully support the intent of this resolution. We welcome any and all opportunities to forge new and stronger relationships within our communities. We look forward to a chance to come together to consider with care and respect all of the perspectives and ideas that might be had for a positive, inclusive, and shared vision for the future of Mauna Kea. Our broad array of international and national stakeholders and funding agencies are understandably focused on these issues here at the moment, as they have been for the last several years. Future funding security from these stakeholders is always dependent on a viable and stable authorization to continue astronomy on Mauna Kea. As such, the Mauna Kea observatories will support all constructive initiatives to accelerate a community-supported management model for Mauna Kea. I will happily be available to answer any further questions that the committees may have on the Mauna Kea Observatory comments or perspectives. Thank you very much for the opportunity to testify.
Thank you very much. We've received written testimony in opposition from Raylyn Moreno-Yeomans, written testimony in opposition from Jennifer Noelani Ahia, written testimony in opposition from Sherry Thaw, written testimony with comments from Bronson Kainoa Kiyoshi Azama, written testimony in opposition from Marianne Omerad, and written testimony in opposition from Roberta Chu. Moving on to HR 33, there are some folks who provided testimony only on HR 33, so we'll make sure we cover all of those testifiers. Office of Hawaiian Affairs testified on HCR 41 already. Noi Wong Wilson with the Hawaiian Civic Club of Hilo provided written testimony in support of HR 33. Rich Matsuda already provided his testimony under HCR 41. Dr. Dempsey also provided testimony on HCR 41. We have received written testimony in support from Peter Sternlicht for Sustainable Energy Hawaii. We have received written testimony with comments from Hawaii Island Chamber of Commerce, also on HCR 41 as well, and this HR 33. We've received testimony from the Kona Kohala Chamber of Commerce, which we've already heard, with comments. We have received testimony with comments on HR 33 from the Hawaii Island Economic Development Board. We have received testimony, written testimony in support from the Japanese Chamber of Commerce and Industry of Hawaii. We have received testimony in support from the Chamber of Commerce of Hawaii. We have received testimony with comments from Veronica O'Hara. We have received testimony from Thane Curry in opposition. Thane Curry, if you're available, the floor is yours. Please proceed.
Thank you, Representative Tarnas. So I wanted to make clear, I support the intent of the bill and any efforts to be able to improve management of Mauna Kea. However, I have significant concerns about the text of the bill, which is why I submitted testimony in opposition. For sense of context, I have gone to the summit of Mauna Kea for the last 14 years. It's a special place for me. I believe that Mauna Kea is revered and should be protected. I also believe that the University of Hawaii has done well with the nuts and bolts management of Mauna Kea. Now, the bill seeks to be able to improve this management, and I have a number of concerns. First, I disagree with the language on the selection and makeup of the working group. I believe that the resolution needs to include language requiring the chairperson to be a moderate, good faith actor acceptable to a wide range of opinions, not just hardline opponents or even hardline proponents, like arguably myself. So I give examples of people who I believe would be unacceptable. And I think the same holds for other sources, for example, the representative from the Office of Hawaiian Affairs and others. I believe also that the resolution should increase its inadequate representation for the Astronomy Committee. And astronomy is arguably the third or fourth largest employer on the islands. In any future restructuring of the management directly affects hundreds of hardworking people who depend on Mauna Kea related jobs to support their families. These include technicians, engineers, day crew, rangers, maintenance staff, etc. but 7% of the committee makeup right now includes representation from the observatories. I don't believe that's adequate. It's possible, for example, a seat at the table could be reserved for observatory staff who are born and raised in Hawaii. That might be especially appropriate. I disagree with some of the factual framing of the resolution. I believe, again, that UDH has performed the core task of land management extremely well over the past 10 years, and the independent audit effectively speaks to that. Many of the faults listed in the independent auditor's report, I believe, are ultimately due to the state of Hawaii or are overstated. I give examples of the delay in the promulgation of the administrative rules as being partially responsible due to David Ige and other sources. I want to make clear also that, I think we've seen in the comments that this resolution by itself will not resolve the long-standing issues over TMT or astronomy in general. Concerns over the management, are important, but this will not fully fund DHHL, repay beneficiaries for the Mauna Kea Access Road, or bring about Hawaiian sovereignty, all of which I support. And also, I just to kind of look at a broader view, with respect, I think it's strange for the language of this bill to point at UH as the source of polarization exclusively for Mauna Kea. I believe the state should look in the mirror. The Hawaii Supreme Court effectively says as such in this recent decision from the past summer, pointing at the state's mismanagement of the land trust for the DHHL as a source of polarization. And effectively, David Ige and Harry Kim and others have thrown the people of Hawaii under the bus by non-enforcement of the law. I think all these issues need to be resolved if there is a sense of a broader compromise. And hopefully the language in the bill can be improved.
Thank you very much. Appreciate your testimony. Next, we have received testimony in writing in opposition from Catherine Rose-Guo. Testimony in opposition, written testimony in opposition from Paul Lawler. We have testimony in opposition from Hanalei Fergustra. Mr. Fergustra, if you're available, please proceed.
Shucks. Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, good morning, everybody. Good morning, Chairman and staff. My name is Hanalei Fergustra. I'm the spokesperson for Na Kupuna Moko Kiawi, which is a Kupuna organization established in 2003. I'd like to say that we are in opposition of this House Resolution 33. This resolution is written with an intended bias. To be non-biased, it would first have to properly identify the land title. Those lands of Mauna Kea are the property of the Hawaiian Kingdom Crown and Government. Those lands were illegally seized by the provisional government as a result of an illegal overthrow of the Hawaiian Kingdom Government in 1893. I think that this suggested process would have been better received if you would have utilized some of the information that you already have about the lack of genuine consultation with the Native Hawaiian community. Perhaps an early community consultation would have made your resolution a little bit more genuine rather than appearing, like just a process that you have to go to say that you tried. Here's a thought that may help. Stop purporting to be an authority without first speaking of the illegal acts that are in continuity, that has you to appear to be on the high moral ground when you know that the whole existence of the state of Hawaii is based on the legal overthrow of the Hawaiian Kingdom and the theft of the Hawaiian Kingdom property. What starts out illegally remains illegal, regardless of the passage of time. Like the old verbiage, two wrongs don't make a right. I'm going to end here, and I'm sure that if my testimony is well received, then there's much that we can work together with. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate your testimony. Next, we have received written testimony in opposition from Michelle Sandell. Written testimony in support from Norma Wong. Written testimony in opposition from Andrew Cooper. We have testimony in opposition from Cindy Freitas. Please refer to her written comments in opposition.
Aloha.
An important call from legal department.
Could everyone please mute? Oh, thank you, Hanalei. Thank you. Let's see. We have testimony in support, written testimony in support from Na'alehu Anthony. We have written testimony in support from Kalani Flores. We have also testimony in opposition from Deborah Ward, but she provided her testimony in HCR 41. We have testimony in support from Richard Ha. Mr. Ha, if you're available, the floor is yours. Please proceed.
Thank you, Chair Tarnas, and representatives. Just one thing I'd like to talk about is, in addition to our testimony, one of the areas that we recommend be explored is the lack of the physical expression of Hawaiian values on Mauna Kea. We ask that the working group consider creating a Hawaiian Culture Science Center above the clouds as part of its recommendation for the next steps in the stewardship of Mauna Kea. A Hawaiian Culture Science Center above the cloud must be robust enough to physically exhibit the ancestral knowledge and technology practiced by Hawaiian's indigenous people for hundreds of years before Western contact. This includes Malama Aina and Aloha. Like the establishment of a working group that reflects the importance of the Native Hawaiian mindset, language, and voice, a center above the clouds can similarly begin to directly remove barriers to social justice, equity, and access to decision-making authority. And it addresses the issue of communications. A lot of the Native people feel that there's no place up there that expresses Hawaiian values physically. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next, we have received written testimony in opposition from Lanny Sinkin, written testimony in opposition from Shannon Rudolph, written testimony in support from Clarence Ching, written testimony in opposition from Jennifer Noelani Ahia, written testimony in opposition from Sherry Thal, written testimony with comments from Bronson Kainoa Kiyoshi Azama, and written testimony in opposition from Mary Ann Omerad. Members, that's all of the testimony that we have received on these measures. Do you have any questions for the testifiers? Representative Ganadin.
To the Office of Hawaiian Affairs.
Move the mic close to you.
To the Office of Hawaiian Affairs.
Go ahead. Go ahead, Representative Ganadin.
You note that OHA respectfully submits working group should consist of more than just a bare majority of Native Hawaiian voices. Do you have a prospective amendment to HCR 41 that would address this concern? I'd also like to note to the Office of Hawaiian Affairs what is missing in the testimony. For those on the call, I don't see a conflict, but I was actually there on July 17th, 2019, during the time in which a variety of law enforcement officers had a standoff with Kia'i. So I was surprised to not see the testimony of the Office of the Attorney General, the Department of Hawaiian Homelands, or several of the individuals who I met that summer. But this one is directed to the Office of Hawaiian Affairs.
Yeah, go ahead and ask the question.
Do you have a suggestion to this to our committees that notes that that articulates how to expand this working group.
In terms of the actual, I'm sorry, Chair Tarnas, Sylvia Hussey with the Office of Hawaiian Affairs.
Please proceed.
Thank you. Representative, are you discussing like the actual composition or the actual work of the committee?
The discussion of the content of the committee is not going to be addressed, I don't believe, with this hearing. But specific to your testimony, you suggest more than just a bare majority of Native Hawaiian voices. So that to me reads as a suggestion to change the composition of the working group. As the Office of Hawaiian Affairs, we know your mission. What do you suggest?
So our testimony expands on the lineal descendants, the cultural practitioners. We also mentioned the Royal Order of Kamehameha as a group who has been involved in matters of this place, as a group to think about appointing and looking through that. I think our concern is that the composition and the decision making on the composition is rested in one individual, and whether that, you know, for all of those perceptions and whether that actually comes to fruition, having one voice determine the composition undermines the integrity of the process of seating balanced perspectives on the working group. So that's all we're commenting on, is that the current way it's phrased and the current process of decision making of who is on the composition will may undermine the integrity of the composition of the group, and therefore undermine the integrity of the work product that comes out of the group as well. So taking a look at that foundational piece, and then if that is the working group, and then the next step of that working group to decide what is the work of the working group in terms of scope. So that's all our comments we're trying to point out, to take a look at the base foundation of the formation of the working group.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. Any other questions, members? Seeing none, I'll turn it over to the chair of the Judiciary Committee for your committee members to ask questions. Please proceed.
Members of Judiciary, any questions? Representative Ward.
Thank you, Chair. I have a question for Richard Ha, but before that, for Mauna Kea observatories. Regarding the 800-pound gorilla in the reso that doesn't say anything about the TMT, is the issue moot? Has the clock run out to where this consideration is already moot or past tense? What has the TMT owners board or whatever said in terms of, hey guys, make up your mind, or this issue is not even an issue? That's the first question. Is Mauna Kea Observatory still there? And do you know the answer?
So I do not know the answer. Mauna Kea Observatories represents the observatories that currently exist on Mauna Kea. So Representative Ward, I do not know how to accurately answer that question.
We'll have an update on the TMT deadlines, timelines, issue of how long they're going to be on the sidelines, or they're going to go to Chile. Chair, we got a hearing about the TMT. We got nobody to say anything about this. That's rather surprising. Okay, Richard Ha, question to you. You're an entrepreneur and you're a farmer. You suggest above the clouds basically a cultural center for Hawaiian language, lineage, culture, etc. Are you suggesting there may be a half a loaf available on this, that you can have culture and you can have science side by side?
I think that can be achieved, yes. You know, because I've gone to 5 PICO conferences since 2007, and I've learned a lot about declining fossil fuel. And you know, the folks that have been paying really close attention understand that this is a big issue, and we have a chance now with this, if we pull everybody together, from the governor to the legislature, to UH, to everybody. And we can all do this. This is just a one-time shot at it. So that's how I view the thing.
But Mr. Ha, the resolution doesn't say anything about making a decision about the TMT. That's why it's.
Okay, yeah. You know, it's not about the TMT. Everybody knows that the TMT has done whatever they need, you know, the best they could do. This is more than that. This is about respect. And that's what I'm talking about. It's about respect, communication.
Got it. Thank you, Mr. Ha. Thank you, Chair.
Okay. Members, any other questions? Representative Nakamura.
Thank you, Chair. I also have a question for OHA and a question for Healani. The question for OHA is, Ms. Haki, if the composition, I think the biggest criticism I'm hearing is the selection of the membership. And I was wondering if one of the categories that's articulated is lineal descendants. Do you think it's possible for the lineal descendants to select one representative?
So in response, Chair, may I? Chair Nakashima, is it okay if I respond? Okay. Thanks for that. So I wouldn't want to represent what, who can decide one representative. OHA is just trying to expand that the call for seating on that should be broader, and those kinds of considerations should be made. How the community responds to that, how lineal descendants or practitioners respond to that would be up to them. OHA is not in a position and would never want to say, okay, it's one person or it's one person. So I would say, in short, the process is what we are trying to comment on in as broad a process, and let the communities bring forward those opportunities. And right now it doesn't specify that, it just says Native Hawaiians. And so a greater description of Native Hawaiian voices, lineal descendants, cultural practitioners from Hawaii Island would be helpful to be more definitive into the characteristics of those who, is being asked to participate, instead of just being very broad.
Sure. Okay, thank you for the clarification. And then for the Royal Order of Kamehameha, would you also say from Hawaii Island?
So the Royal Order, I understand, has a number of units represented across the island, but it is the Hawaii Island unit that I understand had the significant responsibility and involvement in 2 summers ago, that kind of. So I would say, in respect, that island's Royal Order should be there, right? It's their responsibility for their island, even though that particular order has a broad statewide presence. That would be the honorable thing to do.
It was also suggested by one of the testifiers that environmental advocates be added. And I was just wondering, do you share that concern?
I think the point OHA wants to make is multiplicity of perspectives. So sometimes groups want to put specific seats, but environmentalists are Hawaiians who are scientists who are. So I think if we're trying to put wedges into buckets of perspectives, we would discourage that, because people who have perspectives of science as well as environment as well as Native Hawaiian perspectives are all sometimes embodied in one community, one person. So we wouldn't want to bucketize the kind of composition, because those characteristics and attributes are found in many of our community members.
Thank you.
Okay. Members, any other questions?
I'm sorry, I have one.
Representative Nakamura, second time.
If Heilani is available from Kalahui, Hawaii.
Yep. Hi, aloha. I'm still here.
Thank you. I wanted to ask you, this conversation about, I heard your concern about the composition, and I was just wondering, the discussion that Oha brought up about further specifying subcategories of Native Hawaiian participation. Do you agree with that? Providing more details, including selection process, would help?
I think Rep. Ward is correct in the fact that there's an elephant in the room that it's not in the reso, it's called TMT. And this reso, no matter how it's going to be comprised, it's going to still be controlled by the state. And in the past couple years, the state has shown really bad faith actions towards Kanaka Maoli. It's hard for Kalahui, who has been at the ledge for 6 years, to actually trust in such a process. And it has already caused issues and problems amongst the supporters of Mauna Kea. So we don't see this as a way to discuss management. We see this as a backdoor into finding a way to silence Kia'i and to build the TMT. Mahalo.
Thank you.
Any members, any other questions?
Sure. Can I have another bite at the apple?
Representative Ward.
I've tried to research the answer to my question about, is the issue moot as the clock run out? And there doesn't seem to be too much of an update even online. So I want to ask anybody on the call again, do any of you know what the TMT vis-a-vis Hawaii versus Chile is and when the clock runs out? This is open to anyone who may know or have an inkling of that.
Representative Ward?
Yes.
Yeah,
please.
I know a general idea of that. No, they haven't made a decision on whether to go to the alternate site or stay in Chile. And they stand by their perspective that Hawaii is their preferred site.
Didn't they say in the past, though, we need a decision by such and such a date, and then that date got postponed and postponed? So is it now where there's just a silence and there's not a date that's set? You understand that is the case?
Well, I think COVID changed everything in terms of timelines. And they're also depending on other actions such as the U.S. decadal survey and things kind of outside their control. But I think the best route to find the answer to that is to ask TMT themselves. And you'll be able to get the authoritative answer.
Given this reso that all you guys would be experts or know that, because if it's moot, we're just talking about nothing for nothing. Because again, if it's not about TMT, management is well, I know that's what the issue is about in terms of the reso, but in terms of the substance of what we need is a decision as to proceed or not to proceed. Thank you very much, Mr. Curry. Thank you, Chair.
What was the question from Representative Ward?
The questions?
I think someone else was going to answer or not. No?
My name's Deborah Ward. May I speak?
And no conflict of interest with Representative Ward. No
conflict of interest. If I'm allowed to speak, I will say that there is ongoing litigation in the Intermediate Court of Appeals with regard to the lack of a bond for the 30-meter telescope sublease. And the DLNR has not followed up with the decommissioning plans requirement that subleases do require bonds. Sorry, I wasn't prepared to talk about this, but the other thing is that the TMT is significantly short of funds and has approached the National Science Foundation for over $1 billion. The National Science Foundation is considering the request, but is in consultation with a number of people in the islands about whether or not to even proceed with the consideration of the request because the TMT would need to follow up on a fairly rigorous program of applications before the NSF would even consider it. And if they were to consider it, there would need to be a federal EIS and Section 106 consultation, which has not taken place, even though we requested it back in 2008 when the original EIS was, state EIS was being developed. That Section 106 consultation can take some time, and it may be as many as 2 to 3 years before even that could be finalized. And so the fate of the TMT is probably contingent on money as much as anything. And that's what I can say about it.
Thank you.
Chair Nakashima, may I add a comment to address Representative Ward?
Just a minute, folks. Representative Takumi.
Yeah, not to cut off anybody, but Chair, I don't, speaking for myself, obviously, I think there's been a lot of discussion on this issue for the past hour, and we've heard many different perspectives. Again, not to cut off anybody, but I'm wondering if the chair has enough information to move forward with decision making.
Chair, I'd say this issue is too important to cut off any discussion.
The testifiers have had the chance to speak. Representative Tarnas, I will turn it back to you.
Thank you very much, Chair. So there being no further questions, I think we are ready to move into decision making. So I would like to recess the hearing and move directly into decision making. I really appreciate all the testimonies. It's clear that this working group needs to look at more than just the Kuivalu report. And I appreciate all the information provided in the testimony on the variety of different issues that need to be addressed when looking at what is the best governance structure for Mauna Kea. It's very clear that the composition of this working group needs to have representation from Hawaii Island. And I will urge the speaker when he puts out a call for nominations to outline some of these things, some of these characteristics that we hope that the representatives of Native Hawaiian groups and organizations will have, so that it can be truly representative, as the Office of Hawaiian Affairs is mentioned and others in their testimony have mentioned. I will also emphasize with the speaker that the chairperson does need to be a facilitator, whose goal really is to build consensus within this group. That being said, my recommendation is that we make some technical non-substantive amendments to the resolutions, and that we pass it out as HD1 for both HCR 41 and HR 33. So that's my recommendation. Discussion, members? Representative Ganadin?
With respect to the chair and the intention of this bill, as well as the intention of the speaker to move this conversation forward, I'll be voting with reservations, noting that this was the largest point of political discourse here on the island prior to the pandemic. And it brought up indigenous religious practices, language, the interaction of the state
Can't hear you.
peoples. And should we move forward, I'm hoping that we adopt the suggestion of the Office of Hawaiian Affairs. I'd also like to note that only because of the fact that I believe the legislature is closed off to the public, do we not have dozens of people here to testify on this matter. So for those reasons, I'll be voting with reservations.
Thank you very much. Any other comments, members? Representative Kobayashi.
It seems that we have several groups who would like to just do away with any more discussion. That is, no compromise possible, etc. I would hope that there might be some additional consideration to who should be involved in this working group? And number two, how the working group will gather input. I believe that most of these working groups do not have funds. And I believe without funds, they will not be able to do a wide search of different opinions, particularly since many of these opinions would not be on Oahu. So maybe somehow either a simultaneous or parallel request for funds might be appropriate. Of course, funds cannot be provided via a resolution. Thank you.
Thank you. Point well taken. Any other discussion, members? Vice Chair Branco.
Thank you, Chair Tarnas. Mahalo to everyone who testified today. I know it is not easy, and it's not easy to talk on an issue that is very difficult. And I encourage everyone as this process moves forward to continue to engage. And for me, I would just like to recognize as a Kanaka, hearing the testimony, reading the testimony, and recognizing the generational trauma, the hurt, the sadness, the pain that is involved around this. It's something that is on my heart, and I just want to recognize that and just say mahalo for everyone who spoke. I do feel, though, that in discussion, in hard discussions, there can be resolution. And that is why I will be voting today in support of this resolution, because I do believe we have to continue the conversation and continue to figure out a pono solution to what is happening. Mahalo.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Any other discussion, members? If not, let's move forward with the vote. So recommendation is to pass out HCR 41 and HR 33 and HD1 with technical non-substantive.
My members for discussion.
Yeah, we finish and then we vote and then we do discussion.
They go first.
Yeah, they go first.
Okay, I'm sorry.
But I appreciate it. What did they vote?
I'm sorry, Rep. The procedure is that you proceed with your vote and then I will ask my members for comments.
Thank you, Chair Nakashima. There being no further discussion, recommendation for the Water and Land Committee is to pass out HCR 41 and HR 33 with an HD1 with technical non-substantive amendments. Vice Chair Branco, please take the vote.
The recommendation of the chair is to pass HCR 41 and HR 33 with amendments. Chair Tarnas votes aye and Vice Chair Branco votes aye. Representative Ganadan, reservations, mahalo. Representative Kobayashi.
Aye.
Representative Kong, excused. Representative Morikawa. Aye. Representative Ono, excused. And Representative McDermott, excused. The measure passes.
Thank you. Over to you, Chair Nakashima.
Thank you very much. Okay, members, same recommendation. Any comments or questions? Representative Kobayashi.
Thank you, Chair. I have comments in opposition to this resolution. It's been said there's, if you fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. This is a situation, how about fooling me hundreds of times over hundreds of years? For anybody to look at this kind of proposal in the light of this being an objective, fair way to get a resolution on this, and it's really something where it's going to be controlled by our legislature here, a body that has overwhelmingly been in support of development of Mauna Kea and the building of TMT. We are supposed to look at this and determine that this is going to be a fair way for us to come to resolution. I guess if the resolution that you want is that the protectors should agree to build a telescope, and as long as that is the sentiment, then the working group can come to some kind of compromise. And I guarantee you, that's what's going to end up happening here. It's not going to be something where there's going to be no more development on Mauna Kea. If that's what you want, you don't support this bill. This is for those that woke up one day and decided the most important thing in the world was astronomy over the wishes of people. Those that decided that we should spend $30 million to violently suppress peaceful protesters on Mauna Kea. This is just more of what we've been doing for hundreds of years. So I don't know if there's a working group that was put together to determine how to do the legal overthrow of the Hawaiian Kingdom in the first place, but I wouldn't be surprised. So I'm strong opposition to this particular resolution to put together a working group to determine the fate of Mauna Kea. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, members. Any other comments, questions? Representative Ward.
Thank you, Chair. With all due respect to the author and the intent of the resolution, I can't see how this reso gets us anywhere beyond where we are now, and that's in gridlock. This basically kicks the can down the road, and I certainly still don't have the answer to whether this is actually moot, because it may not even be an opportunity. For those reasons, Mr. Chair, not quite as emphatic as the gentleman from Manoa, but that's a no vote for me. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions?
Can I just clarify for Representatives Kobayashi and Ward, there are two resolutions up for discussion. Are you voting no on both resolutions? You both kind of said singular.
Both.
Just to make sure.
They're the same.
I'm no on both.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, members, any other comments? Representative Todd.
Right, thank you, Chair. So I'll be voting in support today. I share many of the concerns issued in the testimony regarding composition and process, and I'm hoping that we can find a way forward. And even if that means that this does not happen quickly, I do think that it's important to have some form of reconciliation process. But I did want to note that there's nothing in this resolution that will allow TMT to proceed. They already have a legal right to proceed. So it's not about whether they have a legal right or not. It's more about, can we find a way forward? And it's clear that we haven't found that way forward. So with that in mind, my support for this resolution is more looking prospectively, not including TMT. What is the future of management like on Mauna Kea in terms of the current astronomy that is already taking place, but also how do we find better ways to provide benefit from the current activities? As an example, anytime it snows, you have hundreds of trucks going up there to grab snow. It's ever since I was a kid, it's always been that way. But maybe there's a way to kind of look at some of the activity on there and find a way to make sure that this is actually benefiting local people and Native Hawaiians. So with that in mind, I'm hoping we can find a way forward. And I don't see this as a TMT resolution as much as that's been talked about, because nothing in this is going to have any impact on TMT. So with that in mind, I'm voting in support, but I'd like to see further work as to the composition and process.
All right, thank you very much, Representative Takumi.
Thank you very much, Chair. Yeah, all due respect to the introducer of the resolution and the chair of the Waterland Committee, who I respect very much. I will be voting with the reservations. I think the gentleman from Hawaii Kai spoke my mind, believe it or not. And I know when I see that, the hairs
Unbelievable.
the hairs on the back of my neck just went up. But enjoy it while you can, Representative. But I do believe, in all seriousness, from the get-go, we came across this when we tried to stand up an early learning board and an appointed board of education. When we talked about standing up a board of education, conceivably, people wanted to have 50 members on it, because how do you get every perspective possible in the education sphere with just 11 members, in special ed and achievement gaps and personal development and on and on and on? Decisions had to be made. What I see with this, with 15 members, and absent self-determination, it seems to me this is an issue that cries out for self-determination, trust, respect, and communication. And I'm going with reservations because I do believe potentially as this moves through the process, at the end of the day, we can come to something that we can have buy-in. But so for now, I'll go with reservations. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Members, any further comments, questions? Representative Lowen.
Thank you, Chair. I guess I'd want to echo some of the comments of Representative Todd. I think that moving the conversation forward is important. I do think the composition of the group needs work, and that can be looked at hopefully as this moves forward. But, I think there does need to be continuing conversation. And for those of us who represent districts on the Big Island, we know that there are people on both sides who feel both ways about issues that do relate to TMT, even though, as was stated earlier, this is not about whether the TMT has a legal right to proceed or not. And so the conversation needs to keep happening. There's not one voice of the people that's a monolith. There's a lot of different views on this, and there needs to be continuing work to come to some kind of consensus.
Thank you very much. Members, Representative McKelvey. Representative Tokioka.
Thank you, Chair. I'll be voting with support. I heard all of the concerns and I understand the concerns, but what this is a resolution. And in my mind, what this resolution seeks to do is to find resolution. Representative Todd and Lowen talked about the legal rights of what's in place now. And I think we all know that. So this doesn't change any of that. But what it does try to do, and I hope that it does do it, is to get more people at the table to come to some resolution and potentially a path forward for Mauna Kea. I have many people that have reached out to me and talked to me about, their concerns about Mauna Kea and wanting nothing to happen on Mauna Kea. On the other hand, we've had business people in the business community come to us and talk about, and kids who have called me and emailed me talking about their wish to study the stars and to learn from what we can from the telescopes on Mauna Kea. Many people that have reached out to me to vote no on anything to do with Mauna Kea, including my own daughter who went to Kapalama, Kamehameha School at Kapalama. But we have to find the path forward, and I think I thank the introducers of this bill. This is your district. I've always been a proponent of people who come from the district drafting legislation to help resolve issues in their district. So Chair Nakashima, today I'll vote yes and support you and Representative Tarnas. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Members, any further discussion? Representative McKelvey.
Okay, thank you so much, Chair. I wanted to echo, though, what was brought up by OHA in the question and answer period. As to my driving concern in that just out of the groups who are not chosen, already you're going to have division occurring from the word go. I was actually very apprehensive about supporting the resolution because of these grave things, but then hearing the speech of the Vice Chair of Water, Land, and especially the Big Island representatives, to let them find resolution, let the conversation continue. So support you, Chair, and them in that respect. I'll be going with reservations on the resolution, but I still have concerns because of the structure of appointment. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, members, we've exhausted discussion on the committee. I thank you for your time this morning and participating in today's hearing. The recommendation is to move both measures forward as House Draft 1. There are no further questions. Vice Chair. House Draft 1.
Yeah, Chair's recommendation is to pass HCR 41. I'm going to do these separate, right?
Yeah.
Okay. HCR 41 with amendments. Chair and Vice Chair vote aye. Representative Ichiyama is excused. Representative Kobayashi.
No.
Representative Lopresti.
Aye.
Representative Lowen.
Aye.
Representative McKelvey. Representative Nakamura,
Aye.
Representative Takumi,
WR.
Representative Todd,
Aye.
Representative Tokioka,
Aye.
Representative Ward.
No.
All right, Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Thank you. Same recommendation for the concurrent resolution.
The Chair's recommendation is to pass HR 33 with amendments noting the no votes of Representatives Kobayashi and Ward and the reservations of Representatives McKelvey and Takumi and the previously excused members. Any other members voting with reservations? Any other members voting no? Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Okay, thank you very much, members. So Representative Tyus, will you adjourn us?
If there be no further business before this joint committee, we hereby adjourn this hearing. Aloha.